Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is erasing gay people from public life using transportation rules to destroy inclusion. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. This episode of Right Angles brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, I just uncontrollably chuckled at that. I didn't make it up. This is an accusation being made against Governor Ron DeSantis because in response to Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy's order to states that they need to improve the safety of their roads, Ron DeSantis has agreed to crack down on some 9 cities so far who have been asked, Stephen Green, to replace the crosswalks. You know how they paint those stripes to show people how to where to cross the street? Well, apparently in some 9 Florida cities, those crosswalks have been painted by local citizen activists with the so-called gay flag.
Rainbow colors.
So they're calling these rainbow zebras. Pedestrian crosswalks painted as rainbow zebras. And both the Transportation Secretary and the Florida Governor are saying these are dangerous distractions to motorists as well as pedestrians, and that the order coming down from the Department of Transportation at the federal level is that we need to make these roads more safe, and that roads are not for political statements or artistic expression. And these need to be removed. These 9 cities, however, do not want to do this because they are very enthusiastic about their, and I got to read the letters because I can no longer keep up, about their LGBTBIQ people. I don't know what all those letters mean anymore. But anyway, in places like Cayo Hueso, Miami Beach, Orlando, St. Petersburg, West Palm Beach, Boynton Beach, Delray Beach, and maybe I missed one there, they're pushing back against this move by the governor of Florida as well as the transportation secretary. Steve, the opponents of what the federal government and the state governor are trying to do here are literally saying that DeSantis is trying to erase gay people from public life using transportation rules as a weapon against inclusion. Your thoughts, my friend?
Well, first of all, this is a difference between ineffective and effective government, because Pete Buttigieg spent 4 years as Secretary of Transportation trying and failing to eliminate racist overpasses, and now here is Ron DeSantis with just a stroke of his pen making crosswalks bigoted again. And honestly, I think this is just the best news I've ever heard. No, this is also ridiculous. Nobody's erasing anybody from public life. If you want to have a public life, do what everybody else does now and start a Substack. Back in my day, we called them blogs. That's how I got to be in public life. I launched a blog in 2002, and here I am. I'm on YouTube. I'm
Here are
famous.
all 3 of us.
Yeah.
From blogs, yeah.
That's right. Back in the olden days, before Substack and Unheard and all the rest. Here's the thing, which is ironic enough that the crosswalks all seem to go one way. We're allowed, nay, required, to have rainbow crosswalks that represent seemingly everybody except 2 kinds of people, straight people and ordinary gays who just want to get on with their lives. And that's a really silly place. Yeah, that's a really silly place, to me anyway, to make a statement, because it is not inclusionary. It is the absolute opposite of inclusionary to say that the thing that everybody walks on has to represent a certain small fraction of the nation and nobody else. Let's keep the crosswalks very, very simple, I think, so that drivers know where they are and pedestrians know where they are. And I'd also like to get back to just one set of rules. We saw during the Biden administration, or maybe it was during the crazy time of 2020, somebody get arrested for doing donuts on one of these streets painted with the rainbow flag. Except when they're in some places, you're actually supposed to drive on them or walk on them with muddy boots. Or we need one set of rules. You can either drive or walk on them or not. And I think it's just easier to make our crosswalks completely inclusionary again and just put the white paint down on the black asphalt and call it good.
Well, Bill Whittle, I mean, you spent some time living in Florida, so we're really looking to you for some cultural insight here. I do think that Stephen Green has gone amiss here because all I see when I see those black and white crosswalks is division between white and black, strict separation, and that just doesn't. I think that that's a civil rights problem right there. But seriously, Bill, what is it about Florida man-ish that causes something like this to even happen? Like, this was a phenomenon. I read about this, by the way, in the newspaper known as El País. It's a Spanish-language newspaper, maybe owned by the New York Times. I didn't know this was going on. And 9 cities in Florida, there are probably more, but 9 of them so far are engaged in this kind of behavior and are pushing back against this. What is it about anybody that they think that it's okay to, it would be like me saying, hey, I've got a cause that I really believe in, and I'm going to go around my neighborhood and repaint the stop signs. I want to make them yellow or green. What's going on in Florida, Bill?
Well, I think probably the most important thing to understand about Florida politics is that it's essentially a conflict between 2 powerful forces. One of them are mosquitoes and the other is humidity. And everything pretty much evolves out of that. So let's just cut to the chase here, okay? If it turns out that the country had always had rainbow crosswalks and Governor DeSantis decided to paint them into black and white, you could then possibly make a case that DeSantis is trying to erase trans people from the community. But clearly, you can't be erasing somebody from the community by painting over something that was just painted there a couple of days ago in order to insert yourself into the community. So that whole thing, it's like the way the Democrats, it's their entire rhetorical strategy. If you reduce the amount of increase in a program, you're cutting the program. That's how it works for them. So just get that out of the way. Much more to the point, of course, is the idea that any political position has a right to the public spaces. So in a healthy society, if you live in a city, I'm a big believer in federalism, I'm a big believer in voting with your feet. If you live in a city where all of your neighbors are real concerned about this kind of thing, then you can paint your privately owned building with rainbow colors in any way you want to. Not something I particularly want to visit, but the public spaces are subject to the public laws, and the crosswalk shall be white over the existing gray or whatever. This entire thing is an assault. It's an intrusion, and this is for the benefit of people out there who say, this is all an attack on trans people. So I'm going to just tell you something. This is my personal beliefs. I bet you 90% of the people watching this agree with me. If I have an Uncle Timmy, and Uncle Timmy decides that he is a woman and wants to be called Aunt Tammy, then I will probably, since he's a relative of mine, in private, I'll probably say, hi, Aunt Tammy, it's no real skin off my nose, I don't really care. But if Uncle Timmy then insists that I must agree with him that Uncle Timmy is now an actual biological woman, that's where I get off the happy train. That's where I stop being a nice guy about this, because now they are asking me to commit to a refutation of reality. And that is a small example of the much larger story. Nobody really cared about trans people when they were trans people. In fact, most of the old school trans people, you just didn't know them when you passed them, because they had been pretty much achieved a look that would make them not stand out. People who actually have sexual dysmorphia are mortified at the idea of being seen in the wrong place. I mentioned it before. I'm going to do him the courtesy of saying he's a guy because he's not insane. But there is a woman who became a man. He's got a channel called the Offensive Tranny, and he is an actual transsexual with sexual dysmorphia. And the reason I started watching his stuff was I tuned in. I thought, oh God, here we go. Here's another one. And the first things out of this person's mouth, named Marcus, was, I am a biological female with a psychological disorder, and this disorder makes me uncomfortable in that female persona, and so I try to make myself comfortable. But if anyone ever thought I was trying to sneak into the wrong bathroom, I would go home and die from embarrassment and shame. And I thought that person is that I can live with people like that. It's this insertion of this ideology, and the trans thing is the wedge behind which all of the socialism and all of the Marxism and all of the multiculturalism and all of the anti-whiteism and all of the rest of it is the shaft of that spear, but the spear tip is the trans movement. So Ron DeSantis, do what you have to do, and I would remind you that the only way to make people understand that you're not joking is the same way you handle graffiti, because I consider this to be graffiti. I think it's a person marking up public property. And so when you have a building wall that's been graffitied, you have to paint it over. And when they come out and spray paint it again, you have to paint it again. And you have to keep doing that until they realize that you're not going to give up. And then eventually you get back to a decent looking building and presumably a decent looking city.
There's, in this story, there is a mayor that they describe as an openly gay mayor. It's the first openly gay mayor of this city in Florida. And of course, now that he's got that title, nobody else can have it. But very proud of being that first. He said, could it be, this year, it might be the gay community, but next year, it could be somebody else. And then it goes on to say the mayor is warning, suggesting that this offensive against gay pride symbols forms part of a growing tendency to eliminate diversity in public spaces in Florida. Now, I don't care what your cause is. There's something I know as a former school bus driver and frankly, just a licensed driver in general. And that is that symbols for navigation of streets rely upon uniformity in order to be understood.
Absolutely right.
You have to have consistency from place to place, from street to street, from city to city, state to state, so that people can understand. And you'll know this is true if you've ever driven somewhere and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, is that a speed limit sign or is that a interstate street? Like some localities have signs that aren't clear what they are, and that really messes you up. It is legitimate, I think, for the governor of the state and the transportation secretary to say, we do not need dangerous distractions. We do not need political statements. We do not need works of art in the place of symbols that are supposed to consistently represent a particular thing to every driver. And drivers have a broad range of abilities of comprehension. You should not make a driver have to try to interpret what's going on the street, because from intersection to intersection, things may change. I didn't know that they were actually allowing people to paint these things. And so it didn't make any sense to me that anybody would be upset if they said, no, they got to go back to being the way everybody understands them. The idea that somehow this is squelching your freedom to be who you want to be or to even express yourself artistically is ridiculous, because you're painting on the city's streets. And if the city government is backing this because they don't want to ruffle feathers with the LGBT whatever community, or because they just feel like this is their civil rights duty, then the city can provide some parklet somewhere where people can paint things and express themselves artistically, but not in, as they used to say at city government meetings that I've attended, not in the cartway, not in the place where vehicles drive, where lives are at stake. If you're approaching an intersection and you're looking at the ground and trying to figure out what that is, there are people walking across the street. You may harvest one of those people. And that's not what we need to see. So I think this Transportation Secretary is perfectly within his rights to suggest that the states do this. I think Governor DeSantis is certainly within his rights to push back to these cities. And I think the cities should have to comply with this or suffer the loss of state and federal funding, especially with regard to transportation needs, if they fail to comply. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.